Hey Corey, how are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you, Janelle?
I'm great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us here on the Valley. You have a very interesting business that I think a lot of business owners would love to know more about. You own Unbroker and you are a business broker. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and how did Unbroker come to be?
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. I think it's really appropriate. I realize this is the first podcast I've done on behalf of Unbroker, at least since we officially launched in January. And this is obviously a local kind of small business oriented show, which is exactly where we are focused and thinking. So thank you again for having me on as a guest. To answer your question, I can give you a little bit of background. It might help kind of how we got there. I'll walk you through a bit of my career. If it gets too detailed and specific, again, cut me off here. But we started with our own small business in 2007. All the way back then, I had been running and decided to sell a construction company. This is classic kind of mom and pop. My wife and I, and we had a team of subcontractors, and we were running around doing design build work and a lot of residential remodeling. And 6 or 7 years into that, I realized like I don't want to spend the rest of my life in the trades as much as I enjoy doing that as a hobby today. It was not going to be the rest of my life. I actually realized I was really, really excited about technology, and that's kind of where I ended up going with the better part of my career. So we decided to sell that little company, and I didn't know how to go about doing it. So I hired a traditional business broker. And for those who are not familiar, this is someone who comes in and says, "Hey, Corey, we think your construction company is worth X, and we think we can help you find a new buyer," which they did. And we think we can help you do that relatively confidentially and smoothly, so we don't disrupt your operations or your reputation with your suppliers or your subs or your employees, right? So they kind of handle all of that process. And ultimately, Janelle, that sale was successful. They got the job done. They found some new buyers, and they kind of took off, and we helped them with the transition period and so on. There were some things that went well, and then there were some things that I thought could have gone a lot better. Frankly, with that sale process, and sadly, a lot of business owners kind of have the same experience, which is like, hey, that transition wasn't everything I had dreamed for like all of the years and years I put into this business. And sadly, sometimes buyers have the same kind of remorse. Like, this wasn't exactly the business I thought I was getting myself into here a little bit. Like, maybe people weren't fully transparent, or maybe they were, but I didn't understand, or I didn't know, right? So I always look back on that experience. And I also thought about, frankly, like the fees that we paid between you and me. We paid like 12% of our business's value. And granted, I had not run that business like 30 years or three generations the way a lot of small businesses are run. But even with like 5, 6, 7 years of operations, I felt like giving up 10% or more of my business for a sale was a really, really high fee. So I decided I was going to change that industry. Like, well, let's do something about it. I'm a little bit of that kind of like disruptor mindset. So what can we do to disrupt or change it? And I started by going to work for the same firm that handled my sale as a traditional business broker myself. And the idea was like, I'll figure out how to change and disrupt this industry. And then maybe I'll buy another business and I'll keep like flipping these companies and turning them around. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Like, I didn't see a business. Of course, this was like 2008 now that we're entering into. So it wasn't necessarily the best time, right? And I didn't find a way to really change or disrupt the way that businesses are sold. Like, there were some good things and there were some bad things, but Cory Hogan could find a better way. So after doing that for a couple of years, I'd say relatively successfully, I went into tech, and that's where I've been for the past 15 years. And I won't bore you with every stop, but I spent like 8 years at Oracle, and we did a ridiculous amount. I think I did like $19 billion in M&A. It was like the exact opposite of small businesses, where we're acquiring these huge companies, and some of them we ran really well, and some of those acquisitions we did not run so well. But it was a great, great education for me. And then after Oracle, I went from Silicon Valley to a couple of companies based in Utah, which we referred to as Silicon Slopes, right, with the whole skiing thing. And that was kind of a fun period over there. We did a pretty successful kind of grow of a company that we intended to IPO, but later sold to a larger tech company known as SAP. And I went around and did some different things in different technology companies. I went back to a Y Combinator backed company in Silicon Valley known as Lob. And then lastly, a private equity backed company in Roll in London and with a lot of operations over in Europe. And all of this was great. And I was really enjoying the tech scene. But I kept thinking back, like, well, this little small business of mine and all these other small businesses, and there's more and more of them every single day that need to transfer. Like, great, there's a ton of talent, there's a ton of tech, there's a ton of people thinking about these corporate, like big mergers and acquisitions, but like, who's really helping and facilitating and providing a better way for small businesses, like the lion's share of the entities in the United States? Who's providing a better way and path for them? And nobody really was. And then like we had this personal situation on the 4th of July, just this last year, when my sweet daughter was climbing a tree in our backyard, and we were doing like the whole family barbecue thing. And I share this personal story probably way too much, but it kind of ties this all together, right? And she fell from a tree, and we're thankful that she survived because Janelle, she was like super, super high up in this like big white pine tree. You've seen them around town, right? And like it was a life-changing moment. It was life-changing for her, for us. Like as a parent, it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. We get the helicopter to come in and like pick her up and fly her to an intensive care unit where she spent several weeks there. And then she transferred to another hospital to help with what is now a spinal cord injury. And this is the stuff that really matters, right, in life. And it was a really good wake up for me. At that point, I was running around Europe and I'm working with these private equity and whatever, and Wall Street. And then suddenly something like this happens to your family. And first and foremost, it's like, okay, what do we need to do to help my sweet daughter adjust? She just graduated from high school. And her life is forever changed. And we're still learning like on a daily and weekly basis what that might mean for her. After getting her stabilized and adjusted, it was like, okay, I no longer want to be that far from home. I need to be closer to home. I want to come back to the States. I want to work a little bit more with businesses in my own community, because the community like totally rose up and helped us and supported us for several weeks, for several months, like to this day, as we're kind of working through this still. I mean, I had a neighbor just show up and install a ramp in front of our house. Like that's just how wonderful. And he owns a little small business, right? Just like the most amazing good people.
Grassroots. Yeah.
So grassroots.
Mm.
So we wanted to get back to this like original problem. And we're like, okay, why don't we rally together as a family? Let's start our own business and let's help other small businesses sell their own business.
Mm.
And let's use whatever I've learned in M&A and technology in the last 15 years to do it better. And this is what's really changed since I tried to solve this problem the first time, like 17 years ago. AI is here. And AI changes everything. And we can talk about it today if you want, but it changes everything. And it really does allow us to provide a much, much higher level of service at a much, much lower fee.
I
And
do
that's the
want to
premise.
talk about that. So if I want to talk about so many things you just said.
Okay.
So first of all, what a great background to come from, right? Because you were a small business owner, grassroots trades back in the day, which is like me, we're a commercial cleaning company. We use our hands every day. That's how we make our money. I always say one toilet at a time, you're like one brick at a time.
That's right.
But then also like being an
Dirty hands, clean
international.
money. We like to say, we just would say dirty hands, clean money, right?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
I know. The original owner, Wendy Hearn of Wendy's Cleaning Service, she used to say there's money in dirt. And I'm like, yes, there is, and it's good money. But anyway, so yeah, so you used to have like a very hands-on small business, sold that, went through the process as a seller, and then working with multi-billion-dollar international companies. So you've really run the spectrum and the gamut of experience with business. So I'm sure that's really helped fortify your current business model with Unbroker. But then also at the same time, having such a life-changing experience with your daughter and realizing like what's really important in life, right? The emotional aspect and tie to our homes and our neighborhoods is really what drives everything, right? So yeah, it's so great that you have all these, these experiences with these large companies, but like your life experience is what brought you back, more than anything. That's what spoke volumes. So I really want to just highlight that, it sounds to me, based on what you just said, that you are very aware of what matters most in life, time and family, right? That's the equity, right? So if we're out running around and we're building our businesses, it's such an emotional pull, and it really has to foster the growth and, and sustainability of our tribes, right?
Yeah.
So that's really impressive that, you've had so many experiences to get you to where you are.
Thank you.
With all that said, that's like a very authentic approach, right? So like here we're talking about like the neighbor who came over and built the ramp for you. Everybody was available for you and your wife while you were helping your daughter get back to, her life. But now we're talking about AI. How does AI build the ramp? So tell me how AI helps you in your business.
Everything, every day, multiple times a day. AI is not something we do occasionally or periodically. It is something we do like by the minute.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, there's this notion that like we tend when new disruptive things enter the universe, we tend to overestimate their abilities in the short term and then underestimate what they will do for us long term, right? And the whole dot-com thing is a perfect example where there was that brief period, the dot-com bust or bubble, where like we had ridiculous expectations short term, but
Mm.
long term, like we think about how ubiquitous the internet is, right? Like nobody could possibly fathom just how much of an impact it truly would have over years and years and decades.
Yeah.
And I absolutely think about AI in the exact sense. Like, are we in the middle of an AI bubble? I don't know. There's a lot of hype, right? But the reality is it has and will continue to change the way that we live, the way that we do business.
Mm.
I think generally in very positive ways. I see AI as a mechanism to kind of rise all tides. Rising tide lifts all boats, right? I think everybody potentially has a means to a higher quality of life and living on average because of the invention of electricity, right? Or the invention of the internet. Like these were largely good things for humanity and society.
Mm.
I can get into the specifics of how, we use AI, but generally I'm very, very positive and very, very excited about what it's doing for all of us. And small businesses should be using it just as often and as successfully as any large business out there.
Yeah, and so when you're using AI for your business, like I received an email from Jenna Bott, your executive assistant with Unbroker, and she was very upbeat and specific and organized and so it was good communication that almost seemed like it came from a human. So I know that you use that in your everyday communication with email, but does it help you evaluate a business? Does it help you understand, like, do you plug the metrics of a business in, like a potential buyer or seller? Are you using AI to help make sure that people are making the right decisions with buying or selling their business?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Small confession with Jenna, right?
Mhm.
So at first, when we introduced kind of our little version of Jenna into the world, I wasn't sure because it's also new, right? Like I wasn't
Yeah.
sure how to communicate who or what Jenna is to other people. So she had this last name, Jenna Morgan. And for a little while, I think a lot of people thought that she was a real person.
Yes.
And I had a few people ask me, like, we did this ribbon cutting. They're like, "Oh, is Jenna going to be here?" And I'm like, well, I don't know how to tell you, but like
Right.
maybe we played you because Jenna's not a real person, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of felt disingenuous. So now I think, it sounds like you got the message pretty clear. Like she's very transparent up front. Like, hey, I am
Yeah.
a bot. I'm an AI. We dropped the Morgan and it's Jenna bot or something in her
Yeah.
signature. So at least we know kind of who and what we're dealing with.
Right.
Um, just like humans, like Jenna gets a lot of things wrong.
Mhm.
I think on average, she's got a better track record than I do, though. And she's awesome. In fact, I've got her over here. Like, if you want me to just like chime her in and see if she wants to say hi, we can do a little bit of a live demo. I don't know what we'll get.
Whoa. I mean, that's up to you if that's something you want.
I
Is this
love.
something that you incorporate with your clients?
Yes, it depends on the client, right? So if you are, for example, retiring baby boomer and you've been running a manufacturing operation for 30 years, the type of interaction or relationship you want to have with AI may be very different. Maybe you strongly prefer that face-to-face human connection, versus like the next generation business buyer who just got out of school and is super comfortable and prefers the AI interaction, right? So we we kind of calibrate how we approach AI based on the client, based on kind of some generational demographics, right?
Yeah.
Let's just chime in, Jenna, here. Let me see. Hey, Jenna, I'm live on the Valley podcast with Janelle. Are you there? Can you say hi? Let's see if this works.
Hey, Janelle. Great to be here.
Could you hear her?
Yes.
Okay. Um, just give me a rough idea of what a commercial cleaning business might sell for. Let's say 100 to 200 commercial contracts, maybe a little bit of additional residential work in there, low commercial or low customer concentration. So let's say 3 to 4 cleanings per contract per month, good staff, all W-2 compliant, workers' comp in place, clean books and records. Like, how would you roughly swag the value of that business for us?
Absolutely.
Hey, Jen, you got cut off. I heard you start and then you stopped. Can you repeat that?
Absolutely. Hey, Janelle. It's great to be here.
Okay, she might have missed my longer question.
Oh my God, I was going to be so wild. So this is something you can casually talk to her
Yeah,
and
so
kind of like feed it information. She populates it and spits out an answer.
so what she would normally do, let's try that one more time. Jenna, give me a rough estimate on the value of a commercial cleaning operation with 100 to 200 commercial clients, good books and records, good clean staff.
Certainly. For a commercial cleaning business with 100 to 200 commercial clients, clean financials, and a solid team, the valuation typically hinges on factors like annual revenue and sellers' discretionary earnings. Typically, the business could be valued at 2 to 4 times its SDE. For a more precise estimate, you'd want to know the exact financials.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. I couldn't cut you off there. So she'll give super high level. That's kind of generic. Now, not necessarily helpful. Like you could just go out to Chat GPT and get that kind of information, or just Google for that matter, right? But increasingly, we've trained her. We'll give her more information, and she's not the only little bot running around here. We have these different models that we've built out, so we will share the necessary financial information, tax
Yeah.
returns, profit and losses, and otherwise, and get to very, very specific answers and numbers.
And so, okay, so that's so neat. Like I'm kind of blown away because I'm like very much, you know, I'm 44, but I'm also like very archaic, I would say. I may be a little bit of a dinosaur where I'm like, I'm a pen and, notepad kind of girl. But I'm always fascinated by this stuff because it is the way of the future. So I have to keep an open mind. So
Okay,
when
wait.
you,
I beg to differ. You run a really cool and modern podcast, and if I'm not mistaken, you're wearing the Meta Ray-Bans,
I
which is
am,
like a super hip and novel thing. I've got a pair too.
I
I
love
like they're
them.
great, aren't they?
Yes, they are. I know. And they're transitions. I got one pair that didn't have the transitions, but now I can wear them like, and run around outside and have sunglasses when, the sun's out. So,
Nice,
but they,
nice.
yes,
Not a dinosaur though. I'm sorry to cut you off, but you are definitely not a dinosaur.
I'm a dinosaur with meta glasses.
All right, fair enough.
But so, okay, so that's one of the things that you do then. So you use Jenna and you can put specifics in, and the more that you work with her, the more she's kind of groomed to help you to help assist Unbroker. So, and one of the things I was looking at online is that I was looking at like all of your testimonials, And some of the things that you repeat multiple times is that you are unlike another brokerage firm where you don't have high fees, you are more streamlined, more efficient, and so you have lower costs. It looks like you have maybe two business models or payment models. Is that something that you can provide because you are using AI to help with the specifics and like kind
Exactly.
of, yeah, okay. So talk about
Yeah.
that. Talk about your payment structures and what you offer and like and what comes with each of those.
Yeah. So first of all, our customer base kind of fits into three buckets roughly, right? There are customers that are doing under $1 million in annual revenue,
Yeah.
right? Kind of traditional Main Street businesses, we call them. Then there are businesses that are doing somewhere between $1 to $5 million in annual revenue. That would be kind of upper Main Street. And then there are businesses, of course, doing over $5 million in annual revenue, which we'll often refer to as lower middle market, right? These are just kind of investment bank buckets, right?
Yeah.
We have three different products or three different service levels that don't always, but often correspond with those buckets, right? So the first we refer to is our assisted sale program. This is really good for someone who's like, hey, I already know how to sell my own business. Maybe I've done this before. Maybe I have a buyer who's already ready, but I need a little bit of help. I need a little bit of help, maybe kind of finalizing the valuation or working through some of the paperwork or the due diligence. There's a lot of process, right? There's some complexity, and if it's not done right, it can be a little bit of a nightmare on both sides, right? So give me a little bit of help, but do that efficiently. And the assisted sale program right now, I think we charge $199 per month. So
Oh,
it's like super low, more DIY, kind of self-serve. We give you access to the tools and the technology, some of the very things that we're using here to help you value your business, right? To help you kind of structure contracts or agreements. We had a client very recently who was running kind of a side hustle Shopify online e-commerce business. Play Ringo actually is the name of the business. And the owner came to us and said, look, I think I've got a buyer. This isn't a huge business, although it had done fairly well. Like they ramped up to almost $2 million in sales during COVID. I'm too busy running my full-time job. I don't necessarily want to pay someone a high fee to handle that sale, but I need a little bit of help. Okay, great. He was a really good fit for that assisted sale program, and we worked with him and the buyer both, and the rest is history. The next level of service offering is called our full service sale. That's where most of our clients right now are falling. And they say, hey, I do want someone to give me a little bit more of a white glove service. I want kind of a local personal presence. I want someone who can come in, maybe meet me, understand who I am, my legacy, my history, some of the
mm,
nuance of my business, and really guide me through the sell so that I can keep running my business or doing whatever else I want to do with my time. Like I really don't want to handle all of the buyer inquiries. I don't want to do the qualification. Like I don't even know the right questions to ask a potential buyer about their background or their financing. I don't know what the kind of current SBA terms and thresholds look like, right? So just handle the sale for me. Okay.
yeah.
That's the assisted sale
I would want
model.
that
Or,
one.
sorry, that's a full service. I'm sorry. That's a full service model. Current rates, we'll adjust these a little bit over time. The current rates, we charge 5% of the transaction value, which is roughly half of what the industry charges. Again,
So what
10%.
happens if somebody decides though, like, so, because that's something I have so many questions about that. I feel like people often fall in the middle category of anything, and I don't want to cut you off. I do want to know what the third
No,
tier
please,
is, but I want
please.
to talk about this one for a minute. So, say somebody like me, I'm like, oh my gosh, Cory, help me sell my business. I still need to run my business. I still need to maintain my reputation, the everyday affairs. I don't want to do all of the, nitty gritty SBA, whatever I don't want to know those things. Help. Right.
Right.
And so then you come in, right? And then maybe something, because it is a very emotional transaction, right? To get rid of something you put so much time, effort, and sleepless nights into. Um, Maybe I changed my mind, right? Maybe you've been doing it and like you've vetted all like the potential people who are like good prospects. You've done your work. I have now decided to pull the plug. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you've done. I think I can't sell it. I want to keep it. What happens then if it's 5%? Like, what is it at that point for you? How does that change?
Honestly, we would do our best to vet and understand kind of your commitment to the process
Ah,
before, because we put a lot of work in upfront, whether it's humans or AI. In both cases, we develop not only a valuation for you, which is really robust. We have several banks and lenders asking us to help them create valuations for their own underwriting, right? So we've got some really robust valuations that are going into place. But we also do marketing, we do all that vetting and qualification, all part of that process. And if at the end of the day you say, hey, I don't want to, I changed my mind, that's our loss. That is our loss. Frankly,
oh,
right now, we eat that. We eat that. We at one point charged, and maybe we should still charge a little bit of an upfront fee
right.
to help address that. We aren't right now. We aren't
Yeah,
right now. So our job is to make sure that you're serious about the process. I
right.
mean, life changes, but in this sense, it's probably a lot like selling a home, working with
Mm.
an agent in that sense, or selling a piece of commercial property.
Mm. Do you feel like people get like cold feet as the process is getting closer to the finish line? Do people typically get excited about the process in the next chapter, or do they start to get a little bit fearful because man, real change is about to occur, you know? They're about to hand the keys over, so to speak.
I don't find people change their mind about selling a
Yeah,
business. It is such a big decision. It is
yeah,
not one to just kind of be done on a whim.
right.
What I do find is a lot of different ideas about what constitutes a good offer or a good buyer. Just yesterday, I presented a full price offer to one of our sellers. This is the second time actually we brought a buyer and an offer to this particular owner. And he made the decision, and I totally respect it, not to accept this offer, same as the last one.
Mhm.
And when asked, I think he's got a lot of integrity, and it would say, like, I just don't think this buyer, even though he's offering to pay me a really great price for this business, is the right fit. I
Mm.
don't think that um, he's the right fit for the legacy. I have concerns about his ability to be successful long term, or whatever that is, right? And I really respect that. And I want to make sure that every seller and buyer both feel, again, good. They feel right. Like this is going to work long term.
Mm.
And I think that's the seller's prerogative to say,
Mm.
thanks, no thanks. Let's find a
Well, and
better buyer.
that's what's also going to help you. Like when people, it's like a good, I don't want to say like a breakup, but like you're breaking up with your business, you're moving it on, and then there's going to be a new captain of the ship, so to speak. And you want to be able to reflect back on that whole exchange and know that it was a positive one, right? Like a good one for all parties involved. And then when that happens, because it's not just the sale, right? And the exchange of ownership, it's what grows after that, right? It's like the relationships that build on both sides moving forward, and they're going to remember you, right? Because you're the one who helped, aid in that transition. And so it's really important for you to, you're like, what do you call that? Like when you're like a matchmaker, it
Yeah.
has to be a good
Yeah.
matchmaking.
That's right. That's right. No, you're absolutely right. And as entrepreneurs, we put like our blood, sweat, and tears into our businesses. They become an extension of us. They are our babies, right? We use that term for good reason. It's like a,
Yes.
a member of our family,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we absolutely deserve and should be able to be very thoughtful and very selective and say, hey, for my employees, for my community, for my customers, for my own personal reputation, for this legacy, let's make sure this is done right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. So tell us about your third tier of service. So I don't want to, because we talked about
Oh,
the first two. I want to
yeah.
know what the third one is as
We can be
well.
pretty quick on that one. We refer to it as our premium level. It just introduces some additional ancillary services in terms of accounting, legal fees, wealth management. Increasingly, as a deal gets larger and larger and more complex, there are other parties that need to be involved. We bring some of those parties in as part of the pricing and packaging. And then, as you would expect, additionally, if a business is, let's say we've got a $70 million manufacturing company, the 5% rate may no longer be appropriate, right? Nor is the, $199 a month type package a good fit, right? So that's just kind of the bespoke third option for unique, often larger businesses.
Right. So it's like, it sounds like it's more tailor made to such a large business, right? Like it's not the business doesn't fit in the box. You kind of fit around the business
You got it.
to make, yeah, okay, I
You
understand.
got it. That's right.
And so I want to know, like, what types of, like, are you seeing any trends in who is selling? Like, so I know I always say that, you know, being a commercial cleaning company, I have great intel so into like how the economy is doing locally because we service so many different types of businesses and you start to see trends like who's, you know, selling, who's, you know, being acquired, you know, who's moving, who's downsizing. And so of course you get a front row seat to that, you know, because that's your job, that's your business. So do you see anything shifting right now? You know, what's the trend?
Yeah, yeah. So there's the kind of like macro trends, and then there's like quarterly trends, right? The macro trend, of course, is the fact that we refer to this as the largest generational wealth transfer in history, right?
Mm,
You've got 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single day, and this transfer of wealth from them and their small businesses to the next generation is really it's unprecedented. They are an incredible generation of entrepreneurs, and a lot of them have held on and have worked really long, and inevitably, whether it's today or tomorrow, they will have to transition these businesses, right?
mm.
So that is happening, and that will continue to happen over the next decade at an unprecedented rate. Super cool. And then the other kind of macro trend on the demand side or the buy side, we see this like new generation of entrepreneurs, and some of them are straight out of school. In many cases, they're several years into their careers, and they're effectively saying, look, I don't want to work the corporate grind anymore. I don't want to work for the man. I want to own my own business. And they're being taught, there's some really great programs if you're familiar with entrepreneurship through acquisition, or ETA. It's this new idea. You go through school, maybe it's part of an MBA program or otherwise, and effectively you're taught how to go out and not build a business but buy one, right? ETA,
Yes.
entrepreneurship through acquisition. And you're given kind of all of these academic skills, and then the challenge is like applying them to real businesses. And the ETA programs are just like exploding. And the number of students, would-be entrepreneurs that knock on our door every day, it's crazy. Like we put a little job posting out there in one of these communities just a few days ago for like an ETA intern, we call it, for the summer. I looked this morning, we have 109 applicants. And and
Whoa.
and these, like, these are really sharp, like econ, computer science 4.0, like perfect score, ACT
Yeah.
students who have amazing skills. Some of them grew up or were part of a small business in their own home. And now they're like, hey, I want to go out and learn how to value and buy and build and acquire a small business. So we've got some
Mhm.
really great trends on the macros, both kind of buy and sell side. And then we see like quarterly trends. We just released our quarterly, like, Unbroker what's hot right now report, and we break it down by those three different revenue bands I told you about. Um, Blue collar businesses are
Mhm.
really attractive right now. There's a lot of interest in home services. HVAC is a big one. Cleaning services actually is really popular, as you probably know.
Mhm.
Clearly, anything that has a recurring revenue component, that could be SaaS or technology, but it doesn't have to be. Things that are a little bit more recession resistant are always attractive during periods of uncertainty. I would say, software continues to be really attractive. An online Shopify business like the one I told you about is good. Construction is really interesting right now. We're seeing a lot of demand for construction, especially specialty trades.
Mm.
Engineering, professional services are doing well. But if you look at what is actually happening in the last couple of quarters, the number one industry, restaurants, retail,
Really?
service-based businesses. Yeah, they're not necessarily the ones that these ETAs are looking for, but the fact is there are millions of people who own and want to exit restaurants or retailers, and there are many people who dream about doing exactly that, of owning and building and selling one of those businesses. So we do a lot of the traditional businesses as well right now.
So it's so funny that so I worked in before I bought Wendy's in 2020. I was an event coordinator for like, large
Hmm.
corporations and, high-end businesses. And restaurants, it's such a volatile market with such low profit margins. And you have to have a true passion for service to want to buy that business. And I mean, I did it for like 25 years, 23 years,
Hmm.
and I loved it. But I was on the sales side, building parties, helping people, making like, short bursts of really fun times, memorable experiences. And then, next, not like a daily, you open in the morning for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you hope you made a good profit. You didn't, leave the walk-in open and spoil the food for the day, right?
Right.
So what a volatile market. So I can see people wanting to have a dream of getting into it, right? And then realizing that it's actually really hard and then wanting to sell it before
Yeah.
they're under.
Have you seen The Bear?
Yes,
In this,
yes,
right? Right.
yes,
Like that conveys a lot of the insanity and the intensity. And obviously it's a little dramatized,
yeah,
but that kind of like what really happens
yes,
in the house, in the kitchen, right?
yeah,
And I think some people watch that show and they're like, God, not for me. No way.
yeah.
Like I want nothing to do with that. And other people are really inspired and say, man, to be able to cook and create food and provide these like really kind of basic human experiences where people come together and they
Mhm.
communicate over food and they celebrate special occasions. That is my dream. And
Yes.
entrepreneurs, we're dreamers. We're not necessarily logical, right? So
Yeah.
we're pulled to these things that don't always make a ton of sense, but
Right.
it's where our hearts are. It's where our passion is. We grew up in the kitchen or whatever that might be.
Right.
It's not for everyone.
Right. To
But they
monetize
continue
your
to be popular.
passion is a difficult thing to do, but if you can, amen. It's such a great thing. Cleaning toilets was never my passion, but I was able to monetize it in such a way that, it really is good for a lot of people. So that's the passion that has become the passion. But so you said something about buy versus build. So that was one of the questions I was asking on a podcast one time called The Workbench. That's his question he asks every entrepreneur. Buy versus build, what would you choose? And I 100% of the time, every time would choose buy. I would never choose build because build, you're doing it from ground zero. Granted, it's all yours and you can create whatever you want. However, you have no financial support to kind of fall back on, right? You're everything. So do you have do you have a choice? Would you buy or would you build?
So personally, I'm in the process of building,
Building,
right? And
yeah.
it's not the first time, but
Yeah.
I also benefit from a few years of experience, right? Like this isn't my first rodeo. Um, if I were coming straight out of school, I think my chances of being successful, and I say I could be coming straight out of the corporate world too. It doesn't have to be straight out of school, right? A corporate refugee scenario. I think clearly my chances of being successful are much, much higher if I can buy
Yeah.
versus build. Like the numbers are really obvious and everybody knows them. Like the success versus failure rates for buying versus build
Mm,
are right there.
mm.
And I suspect there will be a lot of buyers who are going to go out and buy one of these businesses that we're representing, and they're going to keep growing and accelerate, and they're going to do better, and they're going to do more faster than us.
Mm.
And I think that's probably not only a safer, but it's a more predictable route to success. That is to buy,
To buy,
uh,
yeah.
and then there will continue to be like crazy people. Maybe I'm one of them who say, I don't care. I really want to build something
Yeah.
the ground up and take that risk on. What I love though is that there is now an awareness of both options where everyone once defaulted to like, hey, I got to start a business. Now people are like, perhaps I should buy a business.
Right, right. Yeah, it's nice to see the metrics already in front of you and see like the financials and P&Ls. The story has already been told. And then, to acquire a business that's successful, then like the rule moving forward is just don't screw it up,
Yeah.
So you have like a higher foundation, a stronger foundation. But So I could talk to you all day, but you're based in New Hampshire. Is that the only place you service, or do you service the whole country, international? Tell us, who do you serve?
All of the US right now.
Okay,
I think the day will come when we'll expand beyond this country, but for now, it's just US based.
okay.
Um, First of all, we're New Hampshire proud. You know, we contemplated like maybe there'd be a little bit more cachet if we made this another Silicon Valley startup, or even down in Boston would have been maybe a little bit better reputationally, whatever. Um, but man, I love the Granite State, and I mean it when I say that. Like, I just think our talent per capita is just as good, if not better, than any of those great big cities that I worked
Yeah.
in. And in many cases, like just like a lot of grit, a lot of tenacity, just a lot of street smarts. So we're really excited to start a fintech company in New Hampshire. It doesn't happen very often. It's great. Um, and now we're serving clients, in our own backyard, but we're getting pulled into transactions, and we now have customers coast to coast. So anywhere in the US.
That's amazing. Well, I always like to ask people, where can we find you? So if you could let us know like what your website is, how do we call you? How do we talk to Jenna? And do you have an office?
We do have an office. We have we're not always staffed, honestly. We're running around and we're doing the virtual thing. I happen to be working from home today, for example, but we have an office over at the beautiful co-working house. I think you're
Yes.
familiar with Kristen over there in
Yeah.
Milford. So that's our physical presence. Obviously, when we're serving clients around the country, going to our website makes the most sense. Unbroker.com. Provocative name is just, hey, we're a next generation business brokerage. Unbroker.com. I'm sure our phone number and all of our contact information is on there. As far as Jenna, you're going to have to get through a few gatekeepers before you can get to her, but I think you'll have hopefully you had a really good experience with Jenna. We actually put her on our phone lines so that when you called, you Jenna answered. And I think the experience was really positive, but people were a little taken back. Like, I'm not sure I'm ready for this yet. So
Yes.
we said, sorry, Jenna, we're gonna have humans answering the phone for now.
Yeah, I think that that's, it's good that you have your thumb on that pulse because yes, it is the future. Yes, she's very organized and warm, but I think, I'm one of them. It's like, oh, it takes somebody a step back for a minute, to then be like, who am I talking with? That's that whole Harvard study, right? Like the best businesses are those who have a high level of trust and competency, right? Time and time again, trust and competency. So, but AI is still so new, we don't necessarily trust and believe someone's, fully competent when we first meet them. So I think that that's just going to build over time.
I think you're right. Our model right now is human-led, machine-assisted.
There you go. Good.
Human-led,
Well,
machine-assisted.
I love this so much. And I mean, I could sit here and talk to you all day, but the time goes by and you have to get back to working with all of your customers and talking to Jenna. I want to hear more about your business on the side because I would love to understand like a valuation of a business. I think that's actually before we go, I do want to say have you highlight that a little bit. What is the importance of a small business understanding its value? Even if
I
they don't want to sell.
You really should kind of begin with that end in mind and understand of all the decisions that you're faced and forced to make on a daily basis as an entrepreneur, how do they impact the value of your business? Because whether you want to or not, like we're all mortal. We're not going to be able to run these things for hundreds of years ourselves.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that means we're going to hand it down to the next generation, or we're going to sell it to our employees, or we'll sell it to some person we have yet to meet. But in all cases, businesses do transfer, right? So understanding what are the drivers behind the valuation really unlocks your decision making and it helps you think about your own future. And unfortunately, some people have the wrong ideas about their business value and what really drives it. And we've had to be the bearer of bad news sometimes in educating people along the way. So yeah, get ahead of that. Plan, understand your value. We could talk, like you said, about that for hours alone, but
Yeah.
I think that's really important to do, even if you don't anticipate an exit in the future.
That's amazing. Good. Well, you are amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. It was very informative and very thought-provoking. So I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Janelle. It's a great show. Again, true honor to be on here. Keep up the great work. Love what you're doing as an entrepreneur. This is like the fabric of this country is entrepreneurship. So keep
Yes, it
going.
is.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. Well, take care and I'll see you around town.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye-bye.